All right, welcome back. Thanksgiving edition of Prospect Podcast. We have two great guests on. I'll let Derek introduce them. Lyndsey and John Davis, both with extensive history of athletic training. I'll let you go from there, Derek.
Yeah, so John Davis, longtime trainer at Montclair State University, babysat me for 3 years, that's for sure. And then his daughter here, Lyndsey, just kind of followed suit along with it. And now she's doing the same stuff at, high-level college, looking to kind of, move her career along. So I'm excited to kind of talk to both of them about maybe like some of the differences, some of like the similarities and whatnot, and how just athletic training really helps all of us go, because a lot of us just see, us players on the field or, guys doing what they're doing, but really all of that behind the scenes stuff in taking care of each and every athlete is just leaps and bounds adds to it in terms of getting guys on the field and allowing them to kind of, play and perform at a high level. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. It's holiday week, so I know it's busy and it gets a little crazy. So I appreciate both of you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, since we have both of you on, and Lyndsey, you're currently at Davidson, correct? And your father John was at Montclair State for so many years. I think my first question really is, because John was at Montclair State for 40 years. Lyndsey is now on the front end of it at Davidson. What are some of the kind of changes, maybe? And I'll let John kind of talk first, and then Lyndsey, that you've seen kind of like injury types and things that have become more and more prominent over the years in sports. In general, obviously football is is one thing, but in general, as far as sports goes.
Well, I would tell you probably the biggest thing that I've seen as a change is the amount of women in the profession. When Title IX finally passed in 1972 and women were allowed to play athletics, that opened the door for not only athletics, but for people like Lyndsey to get involved from an athletic training standpoint. And the NATA, the National Athletic Trainers Association, is currently over 50%, 55% female. So the women that are associated with the care and welfare of the athletes is tremendous.
Lyndsey?
I'd probably go along with that. I've worked almost every sport under the sun now, and each sport is different and has their different injuries that come along with it. So it's just trying to learn from those, and you take them into the other sports that you work to.
JD, just in your years of kind of, how many years you've done it, is there certain specific injuries that you've seen kind of, used to be something and now maybe it's not so much, just maybe in terms of, or, something that, used to be not so much now, or kind of vice versa?
I think that the amount of research that's being done across the board with all kinds of different injuries has changed our perspective. I mean, concussions would be the biggest thing because of the way people. It's not just you had your bell rung. That's not the adage anymore. But at the same time, the overuse injuries in baseball and swimming and a number of other sports have created the need for more care and prevention of those injuries, because whether you're talking about college kids or kids in youth sports, the year-round nature of sports has created that many more injuries.
Yeah, it's something we talk about all the time, right, Dave? When we talk about guys being kind of one sport oriented now, especially at the younger levels, you just don't get that muscle development in those other areas. You're just, if you're that baseball guy that's constantly throwing, that shoulder or whatnot, and where we talk about all the time, like we try and push our guys, to do multi-sports because it kind of encompasses those other, aspects of it, whether it comes in terms of, injury prevention or just strengthening those other muscles that maybe you don't get enough of when you're only doing kind of one sport.
Yeah, the crossover nature of playing multiple sports helps you because it strengthens your muscles in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, that's and talk about that a little bit because are there certain sports that really you've seen have lent themselves to overuse injuries? I would assume that football's probably less of a overuse injury sport and more of a probably direct impact injury sport from that standpoint, just because of the nature of the sport in general, kind of multi-direction and all that kind of stuff. But I'm curious if there. I mean, baseball is one of the first ones that comes to mind, especially with pitchers, right? Um, uh, but are there sports that you see a lot more overuse injuries? This is for Lyndsey or John that than you see in others.
I deal a lot with that with swimming because it's the same repetitive motion over and over and over again.
Okay.
So I see a lot of that there. And then with tennis, that also too, like the constant use of your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, a lot of overuse there.
Now, how do you have them combat those kind of things? So, tennis players, I'm assuming it's very difficult once they start to really focus, and especially at the higher levels, college or beyond, for them to do anything other than tennis, right? As far as a sport playing standpoint, whereas football lends itself to playing multiple different sports, basketball lends itself to playing multiple different sports. Sports like swimming and tennis are two sports actually that come to mind that become very, very focused very, very early. And I bet most of your athletes have been focused in that one sport for a very, very long time. So how do you combat that to really kind of work on those things to stop some more of that overuse injury stuff?
It depends on the sport and the person. We've just got a whole new football stadium and weight room that is amazing, state of the art. And so all of the athletes are in a lift program to help them. But then also like we have our training room where we have like stim, ice, we have BFR, which really helps with a lot of tendinitises. And then also like consulting with our doctors and our PTs and just finding other ways to help get them to be still on the court, but with either modifications or limits or whatever they need.
And by the way, Davidson is a beautiful campus. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, you're
campus.
spoiled.
Oh my God, that place is unbelievable. So they put a new complex there. Did they tear down the complex that was existing there, or they built on top of it?
So they built the new football stadium across campus, and the
Oh,
old football stadium is now it's almost done being renovated into just a track facility.
track right. Because
Wow.
I remember they had track there, the track at that facility, and they had a field house that was facing that too, right? Is that still there?
Yeah, so that's like our Baker and Vance Athletic Center. So that's where our arena is. That's where I basically live. I don't really venture too much out of there, because all
Right.
my sports are there. Um, so the pool's there. Our tennis courts are behind there. We have indoor courts, and then volleyball plays on the main court. So, and
That's
that's where my
phenomenal.
training room is, where I work every day.
John, you
Is
must
there
like
now?
going to visit there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. If I had that facility when I was at Montclair,
Oh
I
hell.
would have been. It was awesome.
JD, I mean, listen, and you got an update, like yeah. When I'm talking about working in like a closet, like holy hell, I mean, it's and that's one of the things too that you see a lot of these programs, and they're putting money into the athletic training or even like the athletic science part of it, where they're investing money into these facilities because they know like part of it is our athletes, one, it's optics, correct, right? And then mom and dad aren't going to send a kid somewhere, the guys aren't going to go somewhere where they don't see that what they can take advantage of in terms of injury prevention and all of those kind of things. So money being spent in those areas is a big part of this whole thing. I mean, JD, you probably saw it in just your time at Montclair, how much it became something more than it ever used to be.
Well, I don't know whether I'm being prejudiced or not, but I think that athletic training and the care of the athletes is the backbone of any athletic program that's going to be successful. So across the board, you need that. And to go the other step forward when you're talking about support and athletic facilities. If you look across the board at many that I was involved with Division III programs are around for a long time. All those programs, all those schools put in very nice recreation facilities for the whole campus population because people want to be healthy and want the opportunity to work out more.
Yeah,
I-
100%.
I'll tell you one of the things that I learned as an athlete. I played at the University of Connecticut, and I mean the facilities they have there compared to when I was there, it's like not even close. It's like a spa now. So, but it
It's a
literally is like
lifetime.
a
It's
spa.
another Lifetime Fitness. You're good.
It's like a lifetime. No, it's better than a Lifetime Fitness, to be honest. But
That's what happens when you win national championships on the regular.
Yes, yeah. Each place has their own thing. But when I focused myself as an athlete into working with the athletic trainers to be more preventive, and really I figured it out when I was getting on the back end of my career when I was a junior and senior versus when I was younger, where kind of the coaches, and this is obviously the 90s, so it was a different time period, but the coaches are always like, stay out of the athletic training room. But once I had a back injury, we had to sit out a year. And that was when I realized the importance of the athletic training, because that trainer nursed me back. I wasn't supposed to be able to play football again. I had a herniated disc. In the 90s, that was at the time thought of, unless you got surgery, of being like the end of your career. She actually got me back. She strengthened, all the back muscles, and my herniation amazingly went away. And I came back and I played and I started. But from that point forward, I realized that there were things that I could do to prevent the injuries that I was having, instead of like working out to and trying to avoid the training room, trying to avoid the things that when you got hurt, what you had to do. Obviously, that's one part of it. But I started to do little exercises and things that would actually help prevent some of these injuries. And my last 2 years, it was really a lifesaver. I mean, I didn't miss a game, my last 2 years. Now, obviously, football part of that's a little bit luck, right? A little bit luck, not stepping in the wrong place at the wrong time or someone rolling you up. But as far as those little things, like things that could have been problems, I was probably able to avoid. Talk about the importance of athletes starting to understand the prevention side of it, not just the post-haste, the side after they get hurt.
It's not necessarily, it's the athletes involved, but coaches are smarter now, and they understand that if you say back off a little bit, a lot of times they're going to back off. Most of the time they're going to back off. I think there's a bigger trust factor there for coaching staffs and athletic trainers than there ever were before.
And just the collaboration of like the athletic trainers with the strength coaches, just to help have them in a better like alignment, and just like they're lifting more so they're stronger, but also then to
hey buddy,
people, like schools have now more put money into like nutrition and mental health, and like we just got a mental health person for just athletics. We have a
that's amazing
nutritionist that works across campus, but like that's just Davidson. Whereas like if you went to like VCUs in our conference, where they have a nutritionist for every sport and a sports psychologist that works with them, and it's just like depending on where you are is how much resources you have to just cultivate that and put the athlete first and like their health first before the sport.
I think it's Lindsey, and I think you're spot on too, right? Like it obviously goes down to where you are, but also like in speaking to you, JD, like I feel like even throughout my career, it kind of started right where it was like Dave said, stay out of the training room. It was kind of like coaches against trainers, almost like trainers didn't want players to perform, right? So there was kind of that like fine line and push back and forth of like, who's right, who's wrong. But now I think, like you said, that collaboration between coaches, trainers, strength staff, nutritionists, like everybody all on the same page and ultimately just wanting the athlete to be as elite as possible as they can, right? And if all of us work together, we'll get more rather than everybody just trying to like fight back and forth. I think that has really, moved ahead and pushed our athletes to be better than ever, all just because like now everybody's willing to collaborate and have that conversation.
It's also like technically, actually, the athletic trainers are like mostly the bad guy because we don't give great news all the time.
Yeah,
So, them realizing that we're like coaches'
on their
mindsets
side.
changing, that we're on their side and we're
Yep.
trying to get them back as fast as we can, but also like it's really nice that the coaches that I work with at Davidson are not rushing them back. They're like they need to take the time to get healthy, and
Right.
I can't say that it's the same in all of the sports because like our basketball programs, like we've now got NIL and there are premier
Yeah, there's a
sports out
lot.
there.
Listen, and there's a lot of stuff to it now, Linz, right? Like when now you're
Yeah.
talking money, and we talk about this stuff all the time, Dave and I and everybody who we talk to, you know, that money factor, like you got to get back because you need to be in the limelight and you need to perform. And there's pressures from all over, not just on the player, on the coach to win, all of those types of things. I mean, JD, we dealt with a head football coach who was there for, 30 something years. Like we never had to worry about him having to do certain things and he was going to do it his way. But I always thought that your relationship with Coach G, you would sit down and you guys would meet and it was, hey, this player is out for this long, and you would look at the longevity of it, right? Like, hey, he's a young guy. Let's make sure this is not going to be one of these reoccurring things. Like I said, that communication, I think, is just on a different level now, with most coaches and trainers across the board.
I would agree. I mean, Coach G, I don't think we argued over maybe more than 5 guys in the 35 years we worked together. But the coaching staff and I'll go back to what I said before, the trust factor that you guys were discussing. It's there, and it makes a significant difference to the athlete's care, and mom and dad get to know the fact that we're there taking care of Johnny or Sally, without much influence from the coach, and the coach stays in their lane.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard part too that a lot of coaches have had to really learn how to do, and I think the mental health component coming in is a big deal with everything, because I think I think back how that part has really evolved, the mental health component, like that was like
that
suck
wasn't
it
a
up.
thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
They don't feel good about
It's
yourself,
called-
like go to the bar, and drink it off,
Yeah, like wake
but
up.
that's actually
like,
the worst thing you could do. So, and I think that part has really been a great evolution on it. Heck, I do it with my own kid. My own kid's 9 years old, and I have him talk to, because he plays a lot of sports. I have him talk to someone about like how he feels about things and all that kind of stuff, because we want to make sure that he's not feeling like he's doing too much, or if he's in a pressure situation, he has a better way of dealing with things, because he plays quarterback, he plays point guard. Like those are, a little bit more pressure than some of the other positions in sports, and trying to help him through that so he doesn't feel the weight on his shoulders. I can only imagine what it's like for college athletes, especially guys that are getting NIL money. I mean, that's a whole different thing. People think, oh, they're getting $2 million or $1 million. This is their life is easy, but obviously because when you're getting that amount of money and you're a young person, that amount of pressure is very, very high to perform, and that could actually crack you from performing well. Talk about like how you guys, when an athlete comes to you, when you try to, because the athletic trainer seems to me be like the hub of the person to refer, right? Like just like a general practitioner doctor is kind of like, okay, you come in, we think we have an issue. Let me refer you to this specialist for that. Let me refer. How do you kind of view your role in the athletic ecosystem? Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I feel like myself as like I'm the gatekeeper to all of their resources that they have. Um, so it's deciding whether or not like we have our gen med doctor that's on campus pretty much every day. So it's whether it's going to see them or like our orthopedic doctor or our PA, or having to like resource them out to uh like a foot specialist or a spine specialist or wherever like they need to go. I'm the one that like gets their foot in the door and helps set that up.
You navigate that world. And JD, when we were at Montclair, like we had so many doctors and so many guys on the sideline that like are still, that I've still used, right? In terms of whether it be, Dr. Mack or Dr. Palacios or Dr. Fester, like all of these guys, Dr. Borkowski, right? Dr. Braver, like Dave, each one of these
Dr.
guys.
Braver.
Yeah,
Braver's
Dave,
the
like
greatest.
these guys were on my sideline every
Dr.
game
Richard
day.
Braver you had Dr. Richard
Yeah.
Braver? Oh, he's the greatest.
He's
my doctor.
He's the best.
I always thought that one of the best things that I was able to do at Montclair is attract good doctors who wanted to be around. They loved being around athletes, but they also liked to be involved in the training and teaching of athletic training students.
Yes, they were constantly like, Dave, like we'd be in the training room and I'd just be getting taped and someone would be in there. Right. And I thought that was an excellent part of Montclair State too, was when I was there, like there was always learning going on. And, it was nice to see. And now look, now I see these people all the time. If I'm on a sideline somewhere, like there is usually someone or some shape or form is related back to Montclair in some way. And Dave, we got to work with Christina Emmerich, who's like, ultimate Montclair State, like, you know what I mean? So like each one of these people, but the doctors as well. Dr. Mack did my knee surgery. I was with Dr. Braver for a long time with foot stuff. Those people, you're getting the best care. And like you said, Lynn's, like for you, like you're the gatekeeper. Okay. Hey, this is your injury. Go see this person. Or even like that puts somebody at ease, right? When an athlete's injured, it's like, look, let's just go here. You don't need a specialist. Like if it gets there, then we will. So like you're a mental health expert on your own, just having to navigate those waters with all of your athletes. And I can only imagine for the sports that you use, right, or the sports that you do with tennis and swimming, like that's almost more of an individual sport, right, where they're kind of in their own head probably a lot more, whereas football and stuff, like we have some teammates and things of that nature. So I'm sure you're doing your part on the mental health side as well.
Yeah, that's just a whole thing that's evolved, especially since me starting it, seeing like growing up in it, but then going through undergrad and then coming into here now, like there's still like the stigmas around it, and when like schools have the resources, it's more accepted, whereas Davidson, we just got that, so it's still like a learning curve, because we also have, Davidson is a very high academic school, so we actually call our student athletes scholar athletes, because they're expected to do well in the classroom first and then perform on the athletic field or court.
So is there such a thing now?
I guess, yeah. Literally, like, are you? No, it's okay. Maybe still at Davidson, Dave, but like some of these other higher ones, it's like, great school. Hey, I'm coming in here, and a year later, like, I'm gonna get drafted. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, and Lynn's is working in those different sports too, right? Like, so from tennis, I guess you become a pro, right? Swimming, I guess they like long for the Olympics, maybe, or something, but it's not like football. And then also understand, like, our Division III football is sure as hell not the Alabamas of the world, and with dealing with that type of stuff. But at the same time, people are getting hurt, right? And people are needing to deal with these things. If it wasn't for like athletic training staffs, I don't know. I lived in the training room. Like, that's just like, and it sure as hell wasn't by choice. But, to learn how to take care of your body and do those things, it's just so pivotal nowadays. And now to move into this world where the mental health side of it, it's no longer like, hey, suck it up or toughen up or do that. It's like, hey, I'm really dealing with something here. Like, what can I do? How can I go about this? What do I need to do to kind of get to change how I'm feeling or whatnot before it becomes something else? I think it goes back to the education within the whole thing itself. Like, I'm sure, Lynn's, you coming up, recently with your undergrad and all those things, I'm sure you've seen it even change in just that little bit of time period, right? Because let's see, how long you graduated your undergrad in what year?
2015.
Okay, so 2015, and then from there you went and did. So you've been doing this training almost 10 years now, right, at the collegiate level. And then, my goodness, like talking. My last season was 2007, and you were on the sidelines already. So you've been around this your entire life. Just the whole change, all of the changes I'm sure you've seen, right? Even now with dad finished up and now doing his whole thing, right? Like I'm sure JD, you never thought that you'd see some of the things that you saw change throughout that time period, especially with the mental health side of it. I just think that it's constantly evolving, right? With science and technology and those types of things. Like how much does that play a role? The science and the technology that has now come along in terms of athletic training and the preventative care stuff.
Well, just think about the first statement in athletic training is the prevention and care of athletic injuries. So the students are taught that from the beginning, but just the thought process that athletes are getting care that was never even dreamed about 15 years ago. I was talking to one of our doctors the other day about doing ACL surgeries, and a long time ago, ACLs, they'd strap it, but they put them in a cast for 6 weeks after the surgery. Now you're doing rehab the next day. That's
literally
because people have studied it, researched it, practiced it, and it's become common care that you're going to give them early range of motion.
Yeah, I mean those things. Think about it. Back in Dave, like even with we talked about it when we used to. An ACL used to be borderline career ender, if not, you were out of it for at least like a year and a half, right? At least. I mean, I see it even from when I did mine to now. And we're talking like 10 years, even within like 2 years from when my sister did hers to when I did mine. The technology of these things. I mean, look, like even last year, you kind of saw like a spike in Achilles, right? Like tearing Achilles, and just for how fast those guys are able to get back with the things that they're doing. It's incredible. Some of these guys would have never been the same, would have never had the opportunities that they had. But because, that advancement and that research that's being done, it's taking it to an entire different level.
It's also like for like surgeries, any type, because these athletes are with us, they get to come in for rehab every day. Whereas like the normal person is going to PT like 2 to 3 times a week. And we have all these things that like help to promote muscle growth. Like BFR has been like a game changer for me.
Explain that a little bit, Linz, because I'm not sure people will know what that is.
BFR is blood flow restriction. So it uses like the science of the blood pressure cuff to like occlude blood flow to the limb, which is making your muscles work harder. And it's getting you stronger in a faster time frame. Like what you could do in 6 weeks in the training room, you could do, or in the weight room, it's like 4 weeks in the training room.
That's incredible.
With the BFR.
Wow.
Now, is stuff like along the line with like cupping and those kind of things, where they're trying to get quicker rehabilitation when you use your muscles or perform?
Cupping's more of like a modality, so I use it more for like tightness or like something of that line to help like soreness or somebody's tight so that we're preventing a muscle strain or a tear or whatever. BFR is more for like actual building strength, like for surgery, but I also have found it is really helpful with tendonitis. Like I have a bunch of girls that have patella tendonitis on the volleyball team because it's a shocker to me. It was much more lower body injuries than it was upper body injuries because they're jumping.
Right, because a lot of people think volleyball like this or whatever with shoulders and all that, but really, like you've come to the realization that it's legs, right? It's all, squatting, exploding up, jumping, landing, all those kind of things. So you see a lot more lower extremity stuff.
Yeah, and like making sure that all of the athletes have a well-rounded like muscle strength of their lower body. Like you don't really focus on strengthening the glutes or the hip flexors, but they're so important for your quad and your hamstring control. which then
Yeah.
will throw everything off. So making sure that we can get them back to where they were with less pain and just like having them be just stronger and better overall.
Makes sense.
That's interesting. So VFR is like, it's not like foam rolling and stuff like that, those kind of things, or?
No, so it's like an actual like blood pressure machine, and
Oh,
it's a
okay.
cuff. There's like a bunch of different
Got it.
companies that do it. There's some that are like, people will do it with like a tourniquet. It depends on where your
This
training
is
is
the
and
see,
what.
I get fascinated by this stuff because, like, I know if we had half of this stuff, like when I was there, I'd have been like sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber. Like, if I knew it would have gotten me like this much faster or whatever, I would have done it because, like, I had no wiggle room to be shitty or sure as hell be hurt. I didn't have that. I needed to do whatever I could and ultimately stay on the field and be as healthy as possible at all times. And, you know, I see some of these guys now, like even the young kids that I work with, I don't think they really understand the importance of this. And look, I wasn't one of them because I came from a small group 1 program where we had a trainer on game day only my junior year. That was it. A junior year of high school. I didn't know a training staff. My coach taped my ankle if I had an injury. So I didn't know any of that until, you know, I really started to be around athletic training in college in terms of, hey, like, yeah, come get your ankles taped. And yes, JD taped right to your skin. There was no pre-wrap. Like that was part of it. So like you had no hair by week 1. It was always funny that the freshmen like didn't understand that. So they got like, you know, that was welcome to the training world. But like even my guys now, like they go to the trainer, you know, pre, post, whatever. I mean, you know, look, obviously, you know, Emmerich is one of the, you know, higher level athletic trainers, and she's very fortunate to have certain things. And, you know, Dave and I have been around numerous trainers, and just to get the kids to understand that this is not a punishment, right? And like, don't fight me on this because I'm ultimately trying to help you. I think that's a piece of the puzzle that the younger guys, right, going into college or just in high school in general, they're starting to get that at a younger age. Whereas, you know, even Dave's son, who's 9, understands like, hey, you know, Dad, I got to do some ankle exercises or whatever, or because, you know, maybe this is sore or that is sore. So he's going to know that, you know, going into sports, having played it all the time. Guys are more aware of how to take care of their bodies. And that education comes from that. A lot of now with mandates as well, too. Like, JD, I'm sure when you started, most high schools didn't have trainers.
Correct. And now it's probably, at least in New Jersey, it's like 95%.
Right. I mean, like I said, I didn't have one until, you know, Dave Fellini showed up my junior year, you know, and ended up ultimately being my boss at Mount Olive. But it was funny because he would show up on game day only. If you had any injury, Dave, during the week or anything like that, like we had an assistant coach tape ankles, right? And like that was, you kind of just like did it on your own. And then when you got a trainer, it was like, wow, oh my goodness, like I can actually get my wrists taped, or hey, you know, like I just rolled my ankle, okay, get spatted up. Like it was just so different, that awareness of like, hey, we actually have somebody here to do that. And even like, you know, doctors on the sideline. Like I said, at Montclair State, I had like 6 guys, you know, we had a stretch guy, for God's sakes, right? like, and now that's like the norm. You see these kids on the sideline warming up at our showcases, Dave, right? And they got the little gun out, like warming themselves up, like doing all this other stuff to get themselves ready. Like that awareness wasn't around when we played. I mean, I'm sure you can, I'm sure UConn was a little different, but you know, it's at the same level. Like it's just, now it's across the board. Everybody looks at athletic training in a different mindset.
You know where it's not in yet, believe it or not. I mean, most high schools in New Jersey, it is in. And I could tell you this, it cost me a coaching job years ago, where there was a kid who was got hurt, and they sent them home, and I was a varsity coach, and he like showed up on a JV bus for a game, which I wasn't coaching. And because there was no athletic trainer in the school, there was no one to, you know what I mean, to check all these things to make sure this was going on. I'm coaching the varsity guys. I had no idea, you know, a kid like went home for school and came back, you know what I mean? So it was one of those things. And the JV coach had no idea that happened as well. But an athletic trainer would have known who were the guy, because they go with you. They would have known who that person was. Amazingly, after that happened, that an athletic trainer showed up 1 week later. What's interesting is
listen, when lawsuits are involved, you know what I mean? Like, it's
but at the youth level,
you don't see trainers in your youth game on a Sunday, dude.
Well, that's the crazy part to me. So, and I'm curious your guys. I mean, I kind of know what your thoughts will be on this, but I'm curious what you think solutions would be for this. So in youth sports, that's a huge, huge issue. Okay. Kid goes down. I mean, most of them are minor injuries, right? Like ankle, you know, elbow, they get banged up or something, but there's never anybody there to assess them. Right. And, you know, smart coaches will just keep them out of the game or whatever. Or if it's bad, they'll send them to the hospital or something, or call an ambulance. But to me, it seems like there should be more trainers, athletic trainers, hired at youth events, because
Dave, that's like so.
Don't we want to?
I never even thought about
this
that
stuff before they get to high school. So
like, I never even thought about that though, Dave.
Yeah,
like I never even
there's
thought.
Almost none. Like, maybe a championship game, you know what I'm
saying? But like go to any athletic complex on a Sunday in the fall where you got 5 youth games and there's no trainer. You got a snack stand, you got this, you got all where like that's I never even crossed my mind.
Sometimes there isn't. That's pretty much my best way of putting it. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. What are your thoughts on how we could really help that?
I know now that since like you have like JAG physical therapy, they outsource athletic trainers for those things. You have like game day sports.
Right. Well, Dave, we have a company that does our 7-on-7 when we're down in Delaware. That we've used that. Remember, they kind of outsource some trainers and whatnot. I get that, but like, that's incredible. Go ahead, Lids. Keep going. Sorry.
That's becoming more of the norm because people see that, but it's just not as widely practiced as like in collegiate and high school athletics. So it's like, as when in high school, like, yeah, you had an athletic trainer there the next time because of one thing, or it's starting to saturate into the youth sports. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's starting to saturate itself to do so.
Right. So like that would make it like, so you could like sign up with that company, Linds, and then you're kind of like an independent contractor under them. Like, hey, I need somebody at this field for, you know, soccer tournament, and like go.
Yep.
Got it. Makes sense, Dave, right? Like that makes sense. Like, hey, you got referees that do it, right? Like
that, you know, and in the old days, you know, obviously athletic trainer costs money. So that used to, now way back in the day, you used to have like doctors that would be on the sidelines that would volunteer their time. Is that something that still happens at like the high? I see that at high school a lot still, that doctors still volunteer their time on the sidelines. But athletic trainers in general are basically either in the school or they're on that contract that you're talking about. How do they feel? Like, how do people continue to fill gaps in that? You have to go to an outsourced firm. Is that the best way that they should go and do those kind of things?
Well, I currently do work for a part-time company and get hired out. And the people who run the business get calls every day for multiple jobs. The question it comes down to, are there enough people to fill those roles, and how much do they want to pay? Because it comes down to one thing: if you want this at your child's event, you need to pay for it.
Right.
Not going to be
and they want to like lowball you as much as you could possibly think.
Well, youth probably doesn't have enough money. That's the problem. Youth probably, the lower the level, the less money there is.
Right, because those people aren't paying to get into a game, right? So they don't have any like extra kitty, and that's like probably the first thing that goes. Even though when you look at it, Dave, like that's the one that can cost you your entire business, because one injury, it's like it's over.
To get from a very simple standpoint, you go and you hand your kid over to a coach for whatever sport. Does that coach, that youth league coach, 10-year-old coach, know any first aid and CPR at a basic minimum? Most leagues
At a
don't
minimum.
check for that. Right.
Right. Like, and we're talking a minimum, right? Because obviously as high school coaches, we all have to be, CPR certified and all of those things. But like, look at your youth staffs, Dave. Like,
a lot of
do
these
all of
guys
are all of your coaches CPR certified?
like I
You know
am,
what
but a
Like,
lot of those guys. Well, let me back up. Actually, the football wise, we are because the AYF it's mandated. So no matter who you are, if you are the lowest level volunteer coach, meaning you're just a dad that's basically on the sidelines to the guy who's running the team, you have, in order to go on that field, you have to have those things.
It's important.
That part is good. But like, shoot, when you go, I mean, I know because I coach travel basketball. I don't think that's been mandated. I happen to have it, obviously, because I coach my son in football, but I don't think that's been mandated. Like, I haven't heard anyone say anything about anything there, and I think that's part of the thing. I wonder also there must be like a shortage per se because there's such a need for athletic trainers at so many different events that there must be a shortage of that, right? There's a shortage of, I mean, why do physical therapy places do so good? There's a shortage of physical therapists, and obviously everybody's trying to get into certain places. So if you open a physical therapy facility, it's basically like opening up a cash cow, right? In most places around at least in the Northeast. But athletic trainers, the same exact thing. There's just the great ones are like Lyndsey, right? They're in a college, or like you are, JD, you're in a college, and your time is paid there. But trying to get
also those guys, Dave, most times have to teach classes in the building in high school, right? Like sometimes they're teachers on top of it and have to go teach a class or two a day. You know what I'm saying? Like, so some of those gigs, and I think, Dave, just to add to what you're doing, not to cut you off, but the burnout rate, right? Like, think about what time sometimes trainers are there till, Dave. Saturdays, Sundays,
right.
summer, like, you know what I mean? Like, these guys are there look, they got to come in early to give treatment, right? They got to stay late to give treatment. There's just so much to do. That's my burnout rate.
Like, that's my question is how do we improve?
How do you combat that?
The profession improve, and what are the tools that they could do to help like as you guys see it, to help athletic trainers have that environment be a better environment for them, and so more and more people want to be in athletic training field. And exactly what Derek said, don't get burnt out from all those hours and all that time that they have to put in, right? Especially from that. Look, I remember the apprentice process. When I was at UConn, I'm sure you had this at Montclair State. Like, those apprentices were going everywhere with the head trainers, and they were doing
those hours they had to log just to be, you know what I mean? Just to take that next step where I need this for this class. Like, I remember when I was at West Orange, Dave, we had kids from Seton Hall, William Patterson, like multiple colleges with multiple student trainers that had to do what they need to do. So yeah, what can we do to improve this so more people want to do it, and then ultimately, stay in it as long as you did, JD?
Well, I can probably speak to that more now, just because it's changed so much.
You're in it,
especially being at the Division I level. Like, there's times where, like, in a month and a half, I don't get a day off because of when games are, when practices are, or like having to go in to do treatments before anything. I will pretty much consistently work a 10 to 12 hour day just because of how we function, which is not the norm everywhere, which does attribute to the burnout. And
definitely
in college athletics,
and you're young.
Yeah, in college athletics, and I'm probably some high school too, it's like we don't get paid our value. And it's just, for schools to not pay us our value, it's like
you're literally holding it together with, you're literally holding it together. Tape, you know what I mean? Like, literally physically holding their student athletes together, and ultimately the attendance, all of those things, like, that's what makes the money.
At the bigger picture, at the end of it, like, we're there for risk management and liability, so that like we're saving the school money because we're
One
there.
lawsuit.
So like that's a whole mind frame that needs to just evolve over time to have us paid what we're actually worth.
100%.
Beyond that, right? Because the pay, first of all, Division I schools, there's no excuse for it because there's
How much they're
plenty of
making.
money
Yeah.
available for most of those institutions. How does it begin to like? Because I guess my thing is that I think that the reason why that happens is that not enough administrators understand the value that goes into it, right? So that's the whole part of it. Like at the word athletic trainer, actually in itself on its face is confusing, right? It's confusing in itself, right? Like if I told somebody I'm an athletic trainer, they most people, the average person thinks that you go work at a facility training athletes all day long, developing them, right? They don't think of it as the athletic trainer that goes and works with them in rehab, tapes their ankles, all those kind of things, gets them back to be healthy. They think of them as the person that does speed and quickness training and all those kind of things. And that's part of the overall issue, I think, with athletic training is the helping people to understand that. Now this is maybe above everybody's pay grade, but John, now that you're working in the NFL, you know the NFL obviously is working hard to really value these type of things and have these kind of separate models. So that like the job that you're doing is a specialized job, right? A really, really specialized job focused in one particular area. That's the thing that I think in the long run will start to kind of help the overall understanding of what this, and they're doing it with mental health. They're starting to do it here and there, but what the role of the athletic trainer is. Talk about how you see the ways that athletic trainers can continue to increase their value, and what do you think the industry has to do to educate the people that obviously in most cases pay the bills on this stuff to value what the athletic trainers do?
It's so different at each like institution, whereas like the NFL, they have all this money that they can't put in the resources, whereas like Power Four schools have the money to put into the resources, but you come to a mid-major and we are much more controlled by like the actual administration of the school,
Right.
and they're working the budget, whereas like Power Four
Is
schools,
that
it's a
because it's
completely
private
different thing.
too? Right? Does that matter too? Right? Because Davidson's private, no?
No, whereas like it's who controls the budget of the actual college, because that's under the college. Like even for Montclair, like they had a president that wasn't
Yep. You go ahead.
supportive of athletics.
Yeah.
So they had to make do with a lot more things that they didn't have the resources for. Like more schools are seeing that, but it just depends on what the administration of the school is and what their priorities
Right.
are and how much money they want to put into it. Because athletics is a
$1 billion industry, right? Like you're
Yeah.
telling me that these guys in the national that are going to go to the, college playoff, like aren't making money, right? Like that's where are you going to reinvest it? Where are you going to put it into?
Hey, we can make the whole aspect of the name of athletic trainer. We could do hours upon that. And so in the long run,
You've been fighting the good fight for a long time, JD.
Exactly, but at the same time, people in athletics know who athletic trainers are now. It's not like 25 years ago when you walk into someplace and you'd have to introduce yourself. So many more people know what an athletic trainer is. The whole aspect of the pay and equal salary and not having somebody work, 10, 12-hour days on a regular basis, that's hard, but that's what coaching staffs do. So at the same time, it's a coach expects an athletic trainer to do the same thing because that's what the coach is doing.
Right.
So
like, is that something that's even attainable, JD? Right? Like, is that something that's even like, could you even alter it just based off of like Lyndsey said, like you have different coaches on different schedules, different teams on different schedules in order to get those athletes in and out. Like, how would you even maneuver that other than the fact that, you wouldn't be dealing with the same trainer every time, right? Like, all right, Linz, you're going to work from 9 to 5. And then after that, somebody's going to work 5 to whatever. Like, then you're talking a whole different, person dealing with the athlete, and like, that's your team. So it's kind of like, I really don't look, I'm not a genius by any facet, and I don't have any of the answers, right? And to me personally, as an athlete, like, if Lyndsey's my trainer or JD's my trainer, like, I want that person working on me, right? And that's where I feel like that could be like that's an issue, like, because if you're not there, what are we doing?
That's a big question in it. Like, depends on where you go and how big of a staff is. We have 9, but we have 500 athletes and 22 sports. Whereas, like, if you go to Power 5, you have one athletic trainer or like multiple athletic trainers with one sport. Whereas
Right.
I have covered 3 sports, so I have to work those hours because I have to see all of them. And the athletes trust you because they get to know you. And they want you
Of course,
to do
you're their shrink on top of it all, Lynn's. Like, come on now. Like, I had to puke it out to JD a couple times. Like,
I mean, at points, like, I become like their mother, their big sister, their friend, their biggest cheerleader. It's a very
right, because you're there at the highs and the lows, right? Like, the excitement of like, great job, but then the low of, hey, you just tore this, we got to get back. And that whole process of, and I'm putting my trust in you to make me get what I need, right? Like, that's the whole nature of the whole thing. I think, like, the creating the awareness, right, into like, hey, look at what these people do. Look at the hours they work. Look at what they're getting paid in terms of, I mean, look, I'd love to compare a head football coach at a Power 5 and a head athletic trainer at a Power 5 and see, like, what's the deal? Like, how close, you know what I mean? Like, doctors get paid a certain whatever too, right? So, like, let's talk about that. But I think, like, the stuff that you do, creating the awareness, right? The conventions that you have, the speaking and all of those types of things. I think the more you speak out and the more, like you said, the more places start to realize like the importance of it, like maybe we could catch up a little bit. And I'm not saying you're going to turn around, Linz, and you're not going to have to work 7 days a week. You also know what you signed up for, right? Like, you watched your dad do what he did and what it takes to be great at a profession. So you know what it is, but maybe you can move that needle a little bit.
Yeah. It's also like, I mean, depending on where you are, athletics is like a year-round thing. Whereas Davidson, since it is much more academic and they're prepping you to go off and go pro in something else, like those NCAA commercials, like most of my athletes want to go off and be like doctors and lawyers.
Yeah.
And so they're in the summer, they're doing internships. Like, one of our football players was doing an internship with Parliament in England over the summer. So
it's amazing.
I get like a break in the summer and I can make my own schedule and I can work camps for extra money. But if you go to like a Power 4 school where they're there all year round, it's just
never ends. Yeah.
Well, all you need is Stephen Curry to just drop, about 10 million right down.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, thank you very much. I'm now a pro, and you guys will be in great shape.
Yeah, then you can hire whoever you want, Linz.
Yeah, that's it. Hire whoever you want anytime. I'm curious, JD, if from a concussion standpoint, and I noticed now some of the NFL players are wearing the Guardians, and which I find that fascinating. Are there things that you guys are seeing that are really helping with the concussions, like lowering them in general, stuff like Guardians, things that are really helped to improve the players' health there?
Better techniques, better technology. Helmets are much more advanced than they were in the past.
Oh God!
And the aspect of not beating the crap out of each other in practice unnecessarily during the week.
Better technique? You mean tackling technique?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
As
great.
in, like, we're teaching it like a more a safer way than we used to teach. Like, just put your head right on the football and run your
Yep.
feet.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things that like encapsulates everything we've talked about today is the NFL, I should say, the athletic training community had a real bump in awareness after Damar Hamlin.
Yeah.
And that pushed the needle a little bit and helped us from a PR standpoint. You don't want that to be the case, but you have to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak.
Right. So once that happened, you're saying it became more aware of, like, we need these people to be doing certain things, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, understand also that the care that he got, he was able to survive because of the people that were there, not only athletic trainers, EMS, doctors.
Right.
That was the perfect storm. That's not going to happen at Montclair State.
Right.
The chances of at a high school where there's one athletic trainer that shows up on a Saturday, if there's a something happens in practice during a week and there's nobody there, the odds are pretty strong that the person's not going to survive.
Right. Because, I mean, even at a high school level, like, you think about it, like, you got one athletic trainer, Dave, right, spread out over, you got soccer over, you got boys soccer here, you got girls soccer here, football's over here, what's over here, they're just bouncing around. And it's like, something immediate like that, like, now what happens, right? Like, unfortunately, that's kind of, like you said, you don't want that to be the reason awareness is brought to it, but at the same time, kind of like how the Heat stuff happened after Corey Stringer passed, right? Like,
exactly.
I remember that became a big deal, right? Like, that was the first, like, hey, I mean, hell, our coaches used to tell us you can't drink water unless you're doing it right. Like, that doesn't happen anymore, It took that unfortunate catastrophic event to kind of move the needle.
Correct.
Damn.
Yeah, and it's also interesting how athletic trainers themselves have evolved tremendously in their own knowledge base. I remember, and the guy's still there at UConn, and he's like a legendary trainer. But I remember them only being focused on us drinking water during the game, and didn't want us like drinking any form of, electrolyte replacement stuff. And I remember even at the time thinking that was kind of crazy, you know what I mean? But they obviously have evolved significantly since then, right? Even on those kind of things. So, and now people are checking what their people's athletes levels are and making sure that they have certain things, because it used to be a situation where you're right, where athletic. I think the great thing is what you talked about right at the beginning is the communication between the coaches in the athletic departments and the athletic trainers that have become inclusive versus how it was siloed before. It was very siloed, and it was that battle between the coaches and the athletic trainers, and they were battling to get done what they wanted to get done. And the coaches were battling to get done what they wanted to get done. And now it's much more of a collaborative effort. I'm sure there are still times, and I'm sure both of you have seen times where you're like, okay, like, I got to make a decision. The coach is kind of wants to push back on you, but it's obviously you as a medical professional. It's your decision. What are, because I think there are certain things that athletic trainers have to do really, really well, and one of them is communicate. But the other thing is their level of authority, meaning their level of authority and knowledge. Okay. And there's a wide range of athletic trainers' capabilities. What can athletic trainers do to show their level of authority and knowledge to coaches so they're more and more confident in their capabilities?
Interesting way to put the question, but I would turn it around and say the coach has to show the respect for the athletic trainer.
Yes.
And then it'll build from that way, because I can't get respect unless I show respect.
That makes sense.
I think that's a huge point, right? Because some head coaches, if they quote unquote shit on an athletic trainer, right, and just like, whatever, dude, don't listen to that, like, we're doing this, we're doing that, then how is that athlete supposed to understand the level of where that athletic trainer stands in this whole process? You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's holding you out, right? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, like, that's not it. Like, the trainer is like, we are all on the same, like, this is where we're at and it's above you, buddy. So like, this is how it has to work.
It's also like understanding my role. Like, yeah, like a good amount of the time I'm the bad guy because I'm holding somebody out. But like at the end of the day, it's in their best interest. So using that perspective of like, this is a situation and we're doing what's best for the individual,
Yeah.
not like the team. Sometimes you do have to put you before the rest of the team. There is a I in team and it's me. You have to
Yeah.
put your health first so that you can better help the team.
Right. And it's also like everybody, because of society now with the immediate of everything, right? Like everything has to happen now. Athletic training in terms of rehab and those types of things about like something that's down the road is extremely hard, especially I feel like in the younger athlete, right? Like, hey man, like if you want to get back for this game, well then every day you have to do this, right? Like it's same like, you know, same with like strength and conditioning stuff. Like if you want to get to this point, then you have to build and kind of play that quote unquote slow game. And you have to do every piece of this. You have to show up for rehab and train and all that stuff where, you know, oh, I'm not going to that. I'm not doing that. Like, yes, you have to go and get this, you know, stuff done in the training room every single day. You have to go in the morning and ice and do stim and do that. And then you have to come back again in the afternoon and do the same type of process and do it. And yes, it gets repetitive and yes, it sucks and it's boring but it's ultimately going to get you where you need to be.
Another big part of that fact, like going back to like your coaches said, like don't drink anything but water, like properly fueling yourself, because like you as a person, you expend 2,000 calories in a day just living, whereas you put athletes on top of it, they're expending way more calories, so they need much more fuel. And how to get
Yeah.
that fuel, whether it's through like Gatorade or like a pre-snack, post, like all of those things is something that like also needs to be understood. Like with female athletes, like it's, you know, they don't think that eating all this is going to help them, but it's like, no, you need to
Right.
learn that this is going to help you be a better athlete because you're taking the priority to fuel yourself properly so that you
Right.
can
Like what you put
perform
into
well.
your body is what it's going to use.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And like that was what I said. Like, athletic trainers have really evolved because back in the day they were telling us just to drink water, which is the athletic trainers were telling us just to drink waters, which I thought was wild. And now that same trainer is still at UConn and he's advocating obviously all the things that are now important from an electrolyte standpoint. You know, I mean, the UConn's facilities are unbelievable. So, and what they have and what they have access to. And I think that's so interesting how the profession has really evolved. The knowledge base and the tools that athletic trainers have available to them has increased so much in the medical community. And they're continuing to come out. Like I find what's interesting because you talked about the blood flow machine, right? The thing that restricts blood flow to be able to help recovery, build muscle. Like those things did not exist, 20 years ago. And there's constantly new things. Like there's all these things like infrared and all these different things that are coming out.
Just look at cold
I
tubs,
wonder
right?
how it has to be really, actually it must be fun too. How you really go to like decipher all these different tools and gather all the knowledge and read the research papers on all these different things.
It's exciting.
Like you must be inundated with new things. I can only imagine how many people are showing up like to try to pitch you guys on stuff that is new and that's evolving that potentially could work. How do you go and find new tools that can continue to help your athletes like the one you talked about before?
So like as an athletic trainer, because the medical field is always evolving, like for you to be able to provide the best care for your athletes, you need to be learning all these new tools that come out. So whether it's like going to a convention and
Yeah.
taking a workshop, or like there's a whole exhibit hall that has all these different like exhibitors that have all these different types of tools, and figure out which ones will work best for you, but also like you have to work within your budget. So like there's some that are so expensive that one school is not going to be able to have versus another.
Right.
So it's just figuring out what you want to learn about, add to your toolbox, but then also like how to best provide that care with what you have.
It makes perfect sense.
It's awesome.
Makes perfect sense. I can't thank you guys enough for coming on. Really, really educational and informative. Really understanding from.
I was fortunate, buddy.
Yeah, to really learn about the whole profession, and then obviously the things that are going on now, which it's a constantly evolving thing. Any final thoughts you guys have?
I'm going to give you one that's kind of, I think, encompassing a lot of the stuff we've discussed. Is athletic trainers are regulated in 49 states in the United States. The only one we're not regulated in is California. That needs to pass so we get the law passed. But athletic training has to be accepted as being part of the medical community, not just part of the coaching staff or support staff for athletes. We need to get athletic trainers at that younger level. But I think one of the things that people need to do, Dave, you with your 9-year-old kid, your kid has to enjoy what he's doing or she's doing so that they stay in it. Because if they don't, usually by the time they're 13, 14 years old, they'll drop out and they'll do other things. But at the same time, you can't have the kid playing AAU basketball and then playing for the high school team at the same time. Because let's say the high school kid gets hurt. The athletic trainer says, you got a sprained ankle, you really should sit down. But it goes out and plays AAU basketball and nobody's protecting him. Yep. Where is the protection? So keep thinking of it as a medical community, not a medical profession, not part of the support staff.
100%.
That's a whole nother podcast too within itself.
Hell yeah!
you opened up part 2 for us, John. Open up
Pandora's box. Let's go.
Because that absolutely is almost it's almost like an issue that from that standpoint, from the medical side, with like basketball, for example, right? Playing high school basketball, then going to play in AAU. That is like one of the like norms that's going on now. That
like
makes
baseball
so
too, right? Like all that stuff.
Oh, it has to make it's obviously very difficult, not just for the coaches, but also for the athletic trainers, because you're like, hey, this person has a slight injury. All of a sudden they go play in a game, right? And they come back and they have a greater injury.
Yeah, you're like, what the hell? Like this is more swollen.
Like, what happened here? Right? We told you to do this. And that you're 100% right on that standpoint. There's no doubt about it. That's another podcast, because I bet you we can explore that for an hour and not have an exact answer on that, because it's so difficult. Because you're battling multiple things on that, especially if a kid's a high level athlete in the recruiting process. That becomes a whole nother animal that's hard to very, very hard to navigate, and has to be extremely hard to navigate in the medical community, especially as an athletic trainer. We're trying to balance all these things, right? Because they're the ones that you're going to come to, right? They're the ones that are going to report the first injury at the high school standpoint, and then you're the one that they're going to go and say, by the way, I got hurt a little bit more at my AAU game, and then the coach is going to be like, what happened?
Well,
you're like, I told him to stay off of it.
Take it a step further. Kid gets hurt playing AAU basketball, then goes in to see the high school athletic trainer. The kid didn't get hurt at the high school. Is that a responsibility of the high school athletic trainer?
Right. So now are you liable? Yeah.
All comes down to liability.
Yeah.
Which is
we need a lawyer. We gotta get a lawyer on the podcast too.
Yeah, no, that's as complex as it gets. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's a completely complex. And John, you're just gonna have to become the head of the Trainers Association, the National Trainers Association, so you can start to solve those problems. And we'll be glad to be your consultant and bring up any questions that you might have to get answered for you.
I appreciate that.
Guys, happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate both of you. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. Right. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all your athletes and coaches that pay attention.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
Thank you so much.
See you later, guys.
See you later.